Transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
As good as we can, man. As good as we can be.
Not bad. I like your setup there.
Are you in Texas right now?
I am in Texas right now.
Very good. Well, we'll get straight into it. I'm a terrible friend. Give me boilerplate where you transferred from, what you studied, and what you're doing now.
I started at SMU, Southern Methodist University, and that's in Dallas, Texas. I started there in the fall of 2015 when I was studying sociology. And so my story is a little bit unique in that I knew that I wanted to transfer going into freshman year. And so after a year, I ended up going to USC, but I began applying, I think it was maybe October of 2015 while I was still in my freshman year. And so, I didn't have recommendations or anything like that. I thought that would have been inappropriate to ask my professors at SMU. But anyway, I put together my application, got my transcripts together, and then I think I got in that May. So that would have been May of 2016. So it was about, 8 or 9 months from beginning to end when I applied, and then when I heard back from USC.
And you went to study, what was your major at USC?
Just like at SMU, I studied sociology, so I didn't really have any period where I sort of switched majors or had any sort of doubt about what I wanted to pursue. So I was lucky in that sense. And then, of course, at USC, I picked up cinematic arts, but I didn't have that at SMU. But sociology was the major, and I stuck with that all the way through to graduation at USC.
What career goals are you aiming towards? Is it working for a practice? Is it starting your own firm?
Like you said, I'm studying at USC Law. I just began a few weeks ago. I am interested in entertainment law. My goal would be to work in-house for, a major company such as Netflix or Disney. But most people, once they graduate from law school, they start at a law firm. A big law firm is what they call it. And that just gives you the experience and sort of the foundation to sort of go in-house or pursue something else. But, that all depends on my grades and how well I do, the first semester and the first year of law school. And that'll set me up for what I want to do in the future.
And so for someone else that may be studying pre-law or wanting to go down that track, what are some classes at USC when you were doing sociology that you found challenging initially, but ended up being rewarding?
So someone studying pre-law, I believe actually now USC now has a program or partnership with the law school where you can begin to take undergraduate classes that'll sort of, put you on the track to go to law school. I didn't have that opportunity, so I can't speak to what courses they have. I don't know if I had any challenging courses. Maybe the workload, I guess, was a bit more heavier than I expected. And so in that sense, I would probably say some of my sociology classes, the upper level courses, which is expected, like sociology of religion. I took a politics of Latin America course, which I ended up dropping. That probably had more to do with the professor than anything else. But I think definitely transfer students and really any student should definitely avail themselves to the guidance counselor or the advisor, as they call it at USC, and just speak with them about their goals. I think actually at USC or in Dornsife, we have pre-law advisors. So outside of your regular advisor for your major, you can talk to someone who can sort of guide you and steer you in the right direction if you're really interested in law school and going down that road.
What was the most difficult part of ramping up as a transfer?
I think the unknown, as a freshman, you're preparing a transfer. So you sort of vacillate between, do I put my roots down at my current school, joining organizations, making any commitments that may, require me to be here long term. You also, the biggest part is academically. So you want to do well. That's the biggest factor in determining the transfer admission is your grades. And so that's something that you definitely want to stay on top of. And then you want to make sure you're taking the right courses, that'll transfer in and give you credit, so you're not wasting time. So you definitely have to weigh that balance between, if I'm going to get in, what courses should I be taking, and then doing well in those courses. So I think that's a big piece of it, the academic part. And then I think the waiting period. I think most people know that just from probably applying to college, just the waiting period can sort of be draining. USC, their transfer process is a bit unique in that you apply and then you could be admitted or they could request your spring grades. And so you definitely want to stay on top of your grades in the spring semester, freshman year, wherever you're at, because you never know if they're going to request those. That could factor into your admission as a transfer student. I would just say, academics should be your number one priority. And then from there, wait it out to see what steps USC takes with your application.
And what's one thing that you missed before the apocalypse?
I would say not having to wear a mask. So many times I'll get off the car, or I'll leave the house, and I'm like, dang it, I got to turn around. I don't have my mask. So, definitely keeping that mask close is something that I'm not going to miss once this thing is over and dies down. And I'm sure a lot of people would agree with that. But yeah, that mask thing, man, that's a killer right there. I've gotten to stores or restaurants, and then I get to the front, and it's like, dang it, I got to run all the way back to the car.
At that point, I mean, they should just have a mask dispenser at the restaurant.
I think some places do, like some public places, they'll give you a mask as you enter, but I haven't been anywhere, but I've heard of that being done. It definitely could be convenient, I guess.
At the same time, though, I mean, I think people are experiencing COVID fatigue. I think at this point, people realize that it's not a legit threat anymore. And you can tell that people are frustrated that they don't want to wear it. They're still wearing it, but you can sort of see it in their eyes. They're like, oh.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, not the part that it's not a legitimate threat, but definitely the fatigue of sort of having to accommodate COVID with, the mask, the distancing. It'll pass, and I'm sure we'll laugh about it in the future.
For sure, hopefully. What communication challenges did you face at USC, and what would you wish TSC as a student org made more clear for you when you transferred in?
I wasn't aware of TSC, I think, until my senior year. At least it wasn't as prominent, an organization to where I was able to join it before my senior year. And that's when I really, I met you and some other friends that we have. And so I would say just sort of getting the word out there, letting students know, we're here. We're here to support you. We're here to serve you, to connect you with other transfer students. And I think, that just speaks to all the organizations and how USC sort of accommodates transfer students. Obviously, there's orientation, there's, the student organization fairs, but you have so many different orgs being thrown at you. It's sort of hard to keep up with it all. So I definitely think, there's a component where there needs to be some additional outreach just so that, students aren't falling through the cracks if they could really benefit from these organizations. TSC, I mean, I found it, like I said, senior year, and that's when I met, some of my greatest friends. Obviously, you've been one of them, but I was just thinking, like, had I found this organization sooner, how much different my experience would have been. There were periods when I first transferred that my only sort of social life was in pieces. So if I was, a part of the InterVarsity, the Christian Student Club, then I would go there and that's where I knew people at. And in certain clubs, the sociology club, I knew people there. But it was no sense of community outside of these sort of separate organizations. And I think TSC has a unique opportunity in that transfer students be able to connect with each other, hang out outside of, the official forum of the organization. And that's what happened with us. And I'm so grateful for it.
I tell that story to people. It's like TSC isn't there to be there always. It's there to be a support system. Great example would be we went to that one beach event and then we never went to a TSC event ever again because we hung out ourselves.
So true. Yeah. That's so true. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. So we met at the beach. For people who don't know, TSC put on an event. I think it was early 2018 or of course, the fall semester, not the actual calendar year. So I think it was like September-ish, maybe end of August. We met at the beach, me, Will, and two other guys. And then from there, it feels like, by that March, we were actually on a spring break trip together with another friend in Seattle. So it's like, man, just the power of that one meeting. And then here we are now. So yeah, I definitely think that TSC has, a great opportunity to be sort of a connector of individuals, unlike other organizations.
One that's there to connect you and then to kick you out of the nest as opposed to keep you paying your dues and staying involved. It really is just about being there when you need it.
Right. Well, some people want to get involved and stay, and that's understandable.
Oh, that's an option too. But we have both options for people.
Right. And we chose the option to depart the organization. We benefited, and then we're like, all right, I'm out. So...
yeah, I got what I wanted.
It's an important thing to do. People, come into, USC, and it can be lonely. I mean, especially if you're like me and you're a sophomore, so you barely, got your foot in the door of college, and then you're sort of in this big city, this big university, and you don't know where to turn, who to turn to. And so I definitely think it's important for organizations, even outside of TSC, to sort of help students feel a part of the community as a transfer student and someone who didn't come in as a freshman.
On that note, I mean, what did you feel made you stand out in your transfer application? Like, what's a point about yourself that you really drove in your college essays?
So I didn't mention this, but I guess I can. I was actually rejected from USC as a freshman. So I didn't get in out of high school. And so with that, I was able to stay in contact with the admissions counselor that sort of helped me while I was in high school, although I ended up getting rejected. So I think that sort of I had that rapport in that, I was able to keep in contact with someone who sort of had some sense of who I was. And then the essays, I mean, outside of the grades, which are, number one, essays or anything else or extracurriculars, that's not going to compensate for a low GPA. It's just the bottom line. But the essays, I think you want to craft a story that tells why USC and why now. And for me, that was just, I had exhausted all my, resources and abilities at SMU, in my opinion. And, I shared that with the admissions committee, and I think that they found me to be sincere because I got accepted. But like I said, the GPA, I definitely think will help you stand out. Their website at USC Admission, they have all, the facts and figures of what that is. The median GPA changes from year to year. But I would definitely, begin to research that and make sure that you're positioning yourself for success so that you're not denied or waitlisted.
Yes.
There's nothing like being denied.
What value do you think there is in being a transfer student, and what lessons could you take from that experience with you into the future? So,
you definitely, as a transfer student, you have to have this sort of grit and this ability to take initiative, because as a freshman, when you come into any college, and especially USC, they're sort of holding your hand, have all these activities and events set up, and it's sort of designated to sort of acclimate you with the university. And they're getting better with transfer students. But for me, and I think I was a bit unique in the sense that all of my roommates, they had transferred as well. So we sort of had each other to lean on. But you definitely have to, just for simple stuff like, where's the dining hall? Where can I print at? Where can I get something, to eat off campus? Even I would also mention the Uber or the free Lyft that USC has. I don't think a lot of students are aware of that. So even something like that, that can be a huge convenience, especially if you don't have a car, you like to grocery shop, something like that. You may just hear through word of mouth, unlike a freshman who maybe, received it in a packet or, was told somehow. I think if you put yourself out there and if you develop the right connections, not necessarily friends, it can be a tough experience, but definitely something that's manageable and not overwhelmed. Little things like that. You have to take the initiative finding out that little stuff. Nobody's going to hold your hand, but it's definitely something that I think, transfer students usually are in the position to do. And I think you could probably agree that you did the same as far as sort of acclimating yourself with the area at USC and all of that. So I definitely think we have that advantage, that we have that grit and that sort of initiative to make things happen.
Getting that insider knowledge is sort of the tricky part.
The stuff they don't tell you at orientation.
Because it's not sexy, right?
Right, it's not sexy. That's a good way of putting it.
So, Jamil, knowing what you know now, if you could go back 5 years or just to a younger, less jaded version of yourself, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell myself that your path is yours to own. Your path doesn't have to be like someone else's, the clubs that you join, the people you connect with, your major. You have to make choices that you are going to want to live with 5 years from now. And so you can't be, we live in an Instagram, Facebook culture where it's always competing and, we're resume padding. But I think it's so important that you make choices and you put yourself in positions that you can live with and that are true to yourself. I think that's something that I did. I think that's a reason that I was successful in transferring, successful in returning to USC for law school, that I really just made my path my own. And I was willing to live with the consequences of the choices that I made. So here we are. I would advise any person who's considering transferring to USC, definitely connect with an admissions counselor. They're going to be the ones who's reading your application, who you reach out to if you have any questions about documents being received. So you definitely want to put a name to the application outside of how they receive the applications, the thousands that they receive. And like I said, stay on top of your grades, reach out for help if that's, your roommates, if that's your advisor, because people are there to help. The resources are there, but it can take some work on your part once you're admitted to make the USC experience one that you enjoy and the one that you envision.
Jamil, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I hope that this helps someone and I have appreciated
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student